Welcome to Confessions of a Terrible Leader, where real leaders share the raw truth about the lessons they learned the hard way so you don't have to. Join our host, Layci Nelson, founder of Transcend Leadership Collective and former terrible leader. On this podcast, we invite you to step into the confessional and get real with the messy stories and behind-the-scenes reality of leadership. Let's get to it.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Confessions of a Terrible Leader. I'm your host and former terrible leader herself, Layci Nelson. I could not be more thrilled to introduce you to Shermin Kruse today. She is an author, a professor, a TEDx producer, and currently on tour promoting Stoic empathy. Look up her name. We're going to drop all the links. She is a brilliant woman. I have so many questions. Cher, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Layci. I really appreciate it. I thought we were just going to talk about drinking, so I'm a little confused about the direction this podcast is taking.
I mean, we absolutely can talk about that. I mean, what is your favorite drink?
Okay, I do have to say that I'm Iranian. I was born in Iran, and alcohol is illegal because it's an Islamic republic. So everybody makes moonshine in their bathtub or whatever. And the vodka tastes like turpentine. So when you immigrate and you taste the vodka and you think, oh my God, this is like water. So smooth. But I have actually learned as I've gotten older that I can't really drink as much anymore. I mean, I can, but then I'll be stupid for 3 days afterwards.
Yes. What is that business?
It's middle age, I guess.
Yes.
So I find the only reliable form of alcohol for me at this point in my life is one glass, and I sip it, of really old aged tequila. That's all I can drink, and I'm good to go.
And you don't pay for it the next day?
I don't pay for it. No. If I space it out, if I sip it, if it's a good tequila, if it's nice and smooth, and if I only have one. That's all I drink. How about you?
Oh, gosh. Well, I live in the heart of beer and wine country. So while I do greatly enjoy beer, I love beer and I love wine, I also am at that point in life where it does not love me back.
Yeah.
So I have to choose carefully when I do choose to consume, and not a lot. So yeah, I also find if I just do like a schooner, like a little one of a beer, I'm good. But if I have a whole pint,
I know,
just one, the next day I just am dragging. Yeah, my brain just forgets what it does and how to function.
There's this really great F. Scott Fitzgerald quote that says something along the lines of, and I'm sure I'll misquote it, but generally it says, I don't miss the innocence of youth. I miss the experience of the loss of innocence. And I always think about that with relation to my inability to be a decent party person now. I'm boring now.
I mean, I want to be in bed by 9:30, and that's not even an exaggeration.
Right. No,
I am now the person that goes to bed at 9:30. I'm up at 5:30, and I'm my best between 5:30 and 9 in the morning, you know?
True. My toxic trait is telling people I'm up for anything. But what I mean is I have to be home by 8. Parking has to be easy. The weather has to be good.
Right.
There should be food.
Always. All these qualifiers now, right? And great non-alcoholic beverage options.
Right. How about a mocktail?
We're so much fun. I think all of our listeners are dying to hang out with us.
Hang out with us. We're cool.
Oh my gosh. Well, segue this for me into Stoic empathy. What is it? What is Stoic empathy?
It's this sort of contradiction in terms that I've learned actually complement one another really, really well in life. And it's this combination of Stoic resilience and empathic understanding. And I actually learned it back in Iran in the good old days when, we were drinking our liquor from the bathtub. And it was because we were living. So I was born in 1977. The revolution, the Islamic revolution occurred in 1979. And one of the things that I think is difficult for people to understand is when the revolution occurred and all these sweeping changes overtook the country, the people themselves, the citizens, were unaccustomed to these new rules and prohibitions. They didn't exist a minute ago and now they exist. And so it's a whole new landscape to maneuver. It's a combination of oppression, but also cultural adaptation to the new regime. And then add to that, there was a war. There was Iran-Iraq war during that time. It started in 1980. It went through the late 80s. It killed 1 million people. And there was maybe 40 million people in Iran at the time. And so that's 1 out of every 40 people who died.
Oh my gosh.
That's a substantial proportion, and a lot of it
Yeah.
in civilian attacks. So it was
Mm.
very similar to maybe what Kyiv is going through right now, a lot of missile strikes into the capital city, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this oppression, we have this cultural shift, we have all these narratives, and then we have all these counter narratives. And then there's the war, so the shortages in the electricity and the lack of hot water. And you don't really know as a child how to cope with all of this. And so what I learned is, listen, you have to be somebody different outside the home than you are inside the home.
Mm.
And not about really big things, but even about small things like alcohol or Western
Mm-hmm.
music, or whether you host parties, or whether you wear your headscarf, or whatever it
Mm.
might be. And so it became this, and it actually resulted in a lot of difficulty in my life in finding authenticity, which has been a great challenge of mine. But I learned how to read a room. I learned how to walk into a room and utilize my empathy skills to read the minds, thoughts, emotions of the people around me, predict their behavior, and then utilize, at that time, I didn't know it was called empathy or stoicism, but utilize stoicism to gain emotional regulation and control over myself so
Mm-hmm.
that I could modify my behavior during that instance in order to stay safe or to
Yeah.
succeed. And then as I got older, the exploration was, okay, now how do I make this into something that's also authentic? How do I bring
Mm.
this inward and just find ways of representing my true selves in situations where it's difficult to be your true self because you're very angry or very scared or very anxious or emotionally aroused?
Right. Or you don't fit in.
Right. Who fits in?
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
know
No
anyone
one.
who fits in.
I don't either. We all just pretend.
We all just pretend. I mean, I don't know anyone who genuinely feels like they fit in. There are places when I'm at home on the couch and I have a child physically on top of me and maybe a dog also on top of me
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and Princess Bride playing in the background. Okay, I fit in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the rest of the time, man, I'm just trying to find my way like a blind person in a room of people who can see.
Yeah.
I just think that is the eternal struggle of life for so many of us.
Why do we all think everyone can see when we just admitted we're all just bumping into each other, trying to pretend we can see?
Well, here's what I'll say. I love that question. I think that's such an intelligent and deep philosophical question, and we could write 7 treatises about that.
Okay.
I will also say I do think our sight improves with
Mm.
age and with emotional control regulation and empathic understanding.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me, my sight has been transitory. It comes and goes. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine you enter a room you've entered 100 times before. All of
Mm-hmm.
your closest friends, or even maybe there's hostility, but it's a room you know, like your family at Thanksgiving,
Right.
whatever it might be. You know how to maneuver that space. You've been in that
Mm-hmm.
space. It's a different level of sight. It's a much more clear level of sight than entering a boardroom for a negotiation that you've never entered before, or
Right.
coming in a leadership position in a new company, or having to present yourself to a new leader of your company.
Mm-hmm.
Those are very, very different. And you can accumulate sight. You really can. I think the hubris and the folly is in assuming you have full clarity of vision or
Mm.
assuming others do. But I think it's safe to assume people can see at various levels at various times, and I can improve my sight. And it's really important for me to understand that sometimes people are behaving the way they're behaving because they don't have sight. And that's terrible for them, but now I have to compensate for their
Right.
lack of sight.
What does that look like in day-to-day interactions in settings like a boardroom or in the workplace? What does it look like to have people that don't have the best sight? And then what does it look like to compensate for their lack of sight while staying true to yourself? I just asked a huge question, I know.
I love it. I love it. What is the meaning of life?
Basically, yeah. Can you unpack that for us in 20 minutes? Thanks.
I got time, 20 minutes, plenty of time. Plenty of time. Just give me a chocolate bar. We're there.
All right.
I certainly don't proclaim to be some sort of guru or to have all the answer. One of the things I would say is I think that the number one method of navigation would be to have a good understanding and grounding in your own moral sense and moral values. Because I'm not going to tell you how to be moral. Your morality is your morality, and your struggles are your struggles. Maybe you struggle with conflict. Maybe someone else struggles with intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that everyone's struggles in these rooms are very different from one another. Everyone's demons are very different.
Yep.
Everyone's strengths and what everyone values is different.
Yeah.
So step one is really just know thyself.
Yeah.
And also realize that in that space between stimuli and response,
Mm-hmm.
there's all of these external factors impacting the middle space. power dynamics, racial dynamics, gender dynamics, what country you live in,
Yep.
economic status, all of those things. But there's also you.
Mm-hmm.
You actually exist. You're in this space between stimuli and response. And while the power dynamics external to you also exist, and it would be foolish to pretend they don't, it's equally foolish to forget to see yourself in that space and like your ability to determine that self based partly on the stimuli, your desired response, and all of the external power dynamics.
Yeah.
So it's really more about teaching people how to read that situation for themselves so that they can navigate these situations with, I'm not going to pretend you're going to get full sight, but I promise you won't be as blind.
Mm.
It does help regain some vision into the room. And that's a tremendous step towards
Yeah.
power and integrity. Not
Yeah.
just power, but also authenticity, integrity, value-driven life, etc.
Oh, yeah. 1,000,000%. That was a great answer to a hard question. Thank you.
Sure.
If we want to take this to the really practical level, let's say I'm prepping for walking into an organization. I'm going to make a big pitch and I kind of know these people. It's not my home base, but I need to win them over to at least understanding this perspective. With your amazing skills, negotiation, I'm coming to you and I'm saying, Shermin, help me. How would you prep me?
The first thing I would say is, dude, you might fuck it up.
Yeah,
Am I allowed to swear on your show?
absolutely.
Here's what the Stoics would say. If you go back 2,000 years, they would say, here's the dichotomy of control. There are things that are in your control, primarily your emotions, your intentions, your judgments, your thoughts. And then there are things out of your control. You can influence them, but you cannot control them. And so that would be the emotions, intentions, judgments, feelings,
Mm-hmm.
thoughts of other people. They have this example, and it's such a great parallel to the pitch, actually. I think about this all the time, or the job interview. The example they give is of an archer, like a bow and arrow.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about the archer preparing for an archery competition. And he has sized up all his arrows and he has measured his bow and he has oiled it and he has perfected it and he has exercised his arm and he got good sleep the night before and he ate a decent meal and he showed up on time and he learned as much as he could about his opponents.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulls the string, he aims, and then he releases. After the release, what happens to that arrow is no longer in the archer's control
Right.
in any way, shape, or form. There could be a sudden gust of wind. There could be
Right.
a small little divot on the board that makes it go awry. There could be
An earthquake.
yeah,
Right.
there could be a drunk frat boy that falls in front of it because they had too much tequila because they listened
Yeah.
to this podcast.
That's right. They're like, we love tequila.
Here's the thing. What you can control is what you always come back to on what grounds you. What do I control? I control my preparation, my research, my awareness of the room, my awareness of myself, my engagement in the room. I can control my own emotions, which means I can control my anxiety.
Right.
That's why we take a deep breath when we're
Mhm.
nervous, because we literally physically slow down our heart rate and
Mhm.
change our blood pressure because we can actually physically alter ourselves through breath. I can control these things, but here's what I can't control. I can't control whether they buy the product or whether I get the deal.
Right.
And knowing that gives you a humble confidence. And then it allows you to focus on the things that are here that are immediately accessible to you. And then one of the things I do in the book, Stoic Empathy, is I teach you how. Okay, how do you read the room? How do you better understand your opponent? How do you read yourself? How do you control your anxiety? How about your jealousy?
Right.
How do you control? Because sometimes it seems like it's not who you want to be, and yet it's who you are.
Right.
And so how do you change that and be
Right.
the person that really represents your values and not just the momentary emotional impression of things?
Power dynamics is fascinating to me, has been since I was tiny. Also have a very different story from your own, but one that necessitated being able to read a room and understand who had the control. And that has served me well, but also not served me well in my life, depending on how I've used it and tapped into it and my own awareness of myself. A lot of our listeners are very into professional, personal development. They are not on this podcast because they think they have it all figured out, right? You don't log on to Confessions of a Terrible Leader because you know you've got life figured out. We all know we're a kind of a mess. So those of us that have recognized it and we're in it, what is maybe that 201 level recommendation, 301 level recommendation for continuing to grow our awareness in all of the ways you just addressed?
what I'd love to do, because I think our time permits for it, is to just give
Mhm.
you a couple of hints, a couple of tips, a couple of tools.
Oh, please, yes.
And then it's nice and concrete, and people can use these tools. There's
Perfect.
a lot more of them in the book and a lot of exercises. And one of the things I do in the book that your listeners and viewers might find interesting is I also offer the neuroscientific grounding and the reasons why
Yes.
these tips work. By the way, I should tell you guys, I try really hard not to cite to psych journals and only cite to neuropsych journals. Anything that had
Love
an
it.
fMRI study. Yeah. So it's hard science there. That was my attempt in this book. Okay, let's talk about maybe a couple of ways of reading the room, right? Your empathic awareness of the people around. And we all know the importance of due diligence. Heck, you go on a blind date and you Google the guy
Right.
before you show up, right?
Right.
Much less if you are involved in a corporate merger or if you're pitching a deal, you get
Right.
to know not just the company, obviously, but also the people in the room. And then when you're in the room, the information that is available to you that is not available to you on social media is remarkable. Let's talk a couple of ways about how you can gather that information. One thing you can do is you can become better at reading body language and tone, especially tone. They say that communication is 7-38-55, 7% words, 38% tone, 55% body language. We focus a lot on the words. First of all, people lie in negotiations all the time.
All the time.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I don't mean that as an ethical disparagement. Like, oh,
Right.
we can't go higher than that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's
Yeah.
that's like every deal. And so how do you decipher beyond the words? And some people talk about body language, right? They teach you how to read body language. We talk about this in the book a little bit too. How to judge open, vulnerable body language versus closed, tight body language. How to judge anxiety versus calm. How to try to judge lies. But the thing nobody ever talks about is tone. And it's shocking to me because after body language, especially in today's world, a lot of us are doing this on Zoom or on the phone.
Right.
It's really what we have access to.
Right.
And so being able to read tone, and the rule of thumb for this, by the way, to you listeners and viewers out there, is first you have to establish a baseline. This is really important. And this is, by the way, why we have small talk. I'm pretty sure this is the only reason why small talk exists, because there's really no other social utility served by small talk other than serving as a baseline for tone and body language. Does this person have a high-pitched tone? Do they have a low-pitched tone? Do they end their sentences in an upward inflection, or do they end their sentences in a downward inflection? And then look for the shift. Because if they're ending downward, and they suddenly end upward, they're either lying or they're nervous or they're hiding something. And you can tell that because of the sudden shift in the tone. If they are downward and suddenly go upward, maybe they genuinely don't know that one. Maybe we do this, they just don't know the answer, but are pretending that they do. You can read that room based on the tonal fluctuations. And what's really cool about this, and then this brings you back to Stoicism, is you can do the same thing with your own tone. You can learn to modulate and control to present power when you want with your downward, to present warmth when you want with your volume or with your cadence, and to present welcoming. Welcome. It's so nice to see you.
Yes.
Come on in. When the other person's nervous, or you need to disarm them, or you need to make them feel like they're in control. So reading other people's tone and then being able to modulate your own tone, huge tip there. Another one I like to give audiences on the spot. There's so many great ones. And this is going to sound really lame because everybody talks about active listening. Yeah, you need to listen. Here's the thing. When I go into a negotiation room, I take so much ego with me into that room, and I have something to prove. And sometimes I need to be the person who's dominating the conversation, and I need to be the person who gets the last word. This is all ridiculous. None of it will serve you in the negotiation. It's not a debate championship. You have to convince them to agree with you.
Yes. You have to make them feel a certain way.
Correct.
Yes.
And depending on who they are, and if you're listening and watching, you can see how are they responding to this tone? How are they responding to this body language? How are they responding to this language, period? And if they're not responding the way I want, change it. Change your inflection, change your strategy, change the way you're sitting, right? Move differently and find what works authentically for you. I'll tell you, there are people right now, some of them are running the world, who slam their fists on the table and swear and yell and shout things, and things get done because that is a form of power. I could never do that. I couldn't get away with it. People would be like, what is that? Like, that's not.
Yeah. Some of us don't get the same pass for that behavior.
Some of us don't come into the room with the same power dynamics. And so we come into the room with a powerlessness that we have to recover from, as
Yeah.
opposed to a powerfulness that allows us to be more temperate.
Right.
But also, some of us don't want to live that way.
Right. Even if I could get away with it,
Right.
why would I choose it?
Because
Yeah.
remember, your negotiations, vast majority of them, they're in the context of long-term relationships,
Yes.
even business ones.
Yeah.
Your clients, your vendors, your partners, your employees.
Hopefully, if we're doing business right, they're
Yes.
long-term
Hopefully
relationships.
they are. Every once in a while, you have that one-off and you can actually take a greater risk, right?
Mhm.
But most of them don't take that form. So the way you behave in this negotiation shapes the level of trust with which you enter the next one. And so long-term, you see the consequences of behaving in a way that is not authentic or true to your own. I'm not telling you what your value system should be, but is true to your own value system.
Right.
That active listening, that viewing and that watching and that awareness of others. And then remember, again, turn that inwards. Listen to yourself before you go in the room. What is it that is getting in the way of my composure and calm and ability to cognitively analyze this situation right now? Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it anger? These can be great emotions. Fear is why you run away from the saber-toothed tiger.
Right. Right. Thank you, ancestors, for keeping me alive.
Anxiety helps you prepare for meetings for the very pitch
Yes.
itself.
Yes.
So the reality is these emotions can serve you. The trick is to stop and identify, are they serving me? Are they not serving me? And if they're not serving me, how do I manipulate, control, twist, distract away from them so that I can focus more on excitement versus anxiety? And very similar emotions, by the way. And neurochemically as well, very similar emotions. And so it's a very easy conversion that you can engage in right before you go in. Your hands can be shaking from excitement instead of anxiety, even if that's just your self-talk.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
I'm excited. But honestly, though,
it helps.
It helps. It makes a big difference with the way you approach the room.
Yep.
And even then, your language gets affected and your tone gets affected. Instead of an anxious tone, you take on a more excited tone.
Oh, yeah.
Or if you really want to go in deep and powerful and strong and downward inflection, then you do some breathing exercises. Or you tense your muscles up and then relax them again. Or you do something that morning that gets rid of a massive amount of adrenaline, whatever it might be. Go for a run, punch a punching bag. I love punching things.
Heavy lifting. That is my go-to.
Go to the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Heavy lifting is great. I mean, I think that's really, really great. Personally, I like hitting things. So I appreciate
Love
your
it.
methods a lot more people. I think it's very cathartic to just go and lift something super heavy because, first of all, it's distracting. It's a form of cognitive distraction, realignment. Also, it's empowering because you're able to lift it. But secondly, all of your energy goes into this thing. When you experience that, your high adrenaline levels are satisfied a little bit more than they were.
Right.
So it's easier to calm down your nervous system than it would have been a minute ago.
Amazing. Shermin, I feel like you just gave us a masterclass. I now feel armed with some secret, not so secret weapons. I am so eager to devour your book.
Thank you.
I am guessing that you did not get to this point in life and this level of wisdom, insight without some bumps along the way in your own journey. And I now am opening the door for you, inviting you into the confessional to share with us your story where you just fucked it up when it came to leadership. And how has that shaped the way that you lead today? The floor is yours.
I appreciate it. I do enjoy the floors. They're a stage and a spotlight as well, because that would
every day.
Significantly
I just
help.
live my life that way.
The story I want to share is actually very deep and personal to me, and it's a moment of deep shame in my life. And, I think a lot of us have these stories, and it's really hard to share deeply shameful stories.
Yeah.
The reason I've been able to share it recently with a little bit more comfort and expressing the vulnerability is that it did happen when I was very, very young. I was a mere child, but the incident burned into my memory, and I will never, ever forget it. And what happened is I was in the classroom. It was back in Iran. This is a context in which people are chanting death to America, death to Israel, death to this, death to that, right?
Yeah.
And then you go back home and everyone's trying to go to America. I mean, it really is a very strange and weird and Alice in Wonderland world to be in. But I knew what the truth was. I knew, even though I was a child, I knew. My parents taught me well. And one of the things you have to cover up, you have to cover your hair. And my family, we're not even Muslim. So this for us is nothing more than compliance with
Right.
the law. And for those who are Muslim, it's still a choice, right? What garb you
Right.
wear on what part of your body, it should be your choice. And if you choose greater modesty, God bless you, man, go for it. And if you choose not to, also God bless you, man, go for it, right?
Right. Right.
Unfortunately, that's not the way it works in the Islamic Republic. And so one of the things the girls have to do when they go to school is they have to wear a headscarf when they go to school. Sometimes it's really hot, it's stifling, there's no air conditioning, we're in the middle of a war. It's an all-girls school. So you're in the classroom and the teacher says, okay, it's okay to take your scarves off because you're all girls.
Mm-hmm.
So you all take your, oh, that's so nice. I'm breathing a little bit, right? And one time this happened and I was in the middle of a class and I was a leader among a group of kids in that class.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly we saw someone outside who was maybe a groundskeeper or a gardener of some kind. And one of the girls pointed and said, man. And all of us, including me, hid under our tables, grabbed our headscarves like as if we were so deeply ashamed. It was almost like a funny, belonging joke. And I fully conformed. I remember this moment so clearly because it's burned into my consciousness. I conformed. I really got into the
Yeah.
theatrics of it. We've all done this in a work setting many times where
Oh,
we
yeah.
conform and we get into the theatrics of it. And then afterwards, I thought, what could I have done differently? Right. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying I stand up tall and proud and, get myself killed, but there are things that I could have done to have
Mm-hmm.
been authentic to myself and still survived that situation. At
Yes.
a minimum, I could have moved slower, or I
Right.
could have acted hesitantly, or said, I suppose we need to. These are at a minimum. I'm not saying you need to be a revolutionary at every chance you get, although, my people are revolutionaries. So,
Right.
that's my people. But that's not even what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I am deeply ashamed of that moment of
Right.
conformity because
Mm-hmm.
it was a
Mm-hmm.
complete betrayal of what I knew to be true. I acted like it among my peers. And it's, no harm, no foul. Nobody died, nobody got bullied, but it never left me.
Right.
Then when I enter the corporate world and they tell me you can't wear ethnic earrings, and for the first 2 years, this was 25 years ago, it's not really like that anymore. For the first 2
Mm-hmm.
years, I wore pearl earrings. And at
Mm-hmm.
some point, I was like, no, I'm going to be appropriate for federal
Right.
court, but I'm going to wear the earrings I want to wear
Yes.
because that's how I need to show up in this space.
Yes.
And that kind of finding yourself in that
Yes.
process, in that system, and finally getting to a place where at least 80% of the time, 85% of the time, you're getting it right.
Yeah.
Instead of you're barely staying above water, you're barely able to catch
Right.
your breath,
Right.
which in a lot of ways was the beginning of my corporate life as well as my childhood in Iran. For me, that's really the biggest story. And again, this is something I unpack in therapy. Why is it still traumatizing me?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, why is it still hanging
Yes,
on?
it's hanging on
Mm-hmm.
because this is an example of a thing that happened in life at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lack of being able to acknowledge with openness who we are, the
Yeah.
courage that it takes to do that. And then in today's parallel corporate setting, the courage it still takes. It's different, obviously. It's not a
Right.
mortal danger. But you could mess up, you lose your job, your kid doesn't
Yeah.
have health care. These are real
Right.
consequences.
Right.
So I just find it really represents such a huge component of my own struggle. And you know how it is with childhood. You only remember like 20 memories.
Right.
Everything else gets
Right.
buried deep inside and turns into a knot in the pit of your stomach. It's just something that really, really stands out
Yeah.
to me. And as I've gotten older and more seasoned and more deliberate and more intentional and more aware and more in control, I've learned more and more how to align my values with who I am in that moment and not to read the room just to conform to it, which is a very different thing.
Oh my gosh. Resonating so deeply. Thank you for that vulnerability and sharing that amazing story realization, and that you came back to it and decided to figure it out is empowering for those of us that have memories we'd rather not. And we're like, wow,
Yeah.
let's dig in, figure it out. So thank you for that share. Very powerful. The abandonment of self can definitely produce a whole lot of shame. Figuring out who we are and then how to stay
Right.
in alignment and stay true to the degree that we are in a position where we can still make impact. We're not so far outside of the norm that we're
Still
going
be
to
a
be
contributing
dismissed.
member of society and be able to succeed
Right.
within an organizational setting, but go home at the end of the day feeling like you didn't cheat yourself out of yourself that day.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, what a powerful conversation. I feel like we just got started and I could talk to you for the entire day.
Me too.
However, I know we both have a lot of other things.
Well, we have a lot of drinking to do.
Commitments.
We have a lot of drinking to do.
A lot. We have a lot of drinking to get done. Day drinking is about to commence. Take that as you will, listeners. So getting our day drinking done. Before we head off to our other endeavors, what is one thing that you would like to leave our listeners with? This has been such a powerful conversation. The listeners, if they were to take home something, that nugget to pluck out and apply, what would you like them to take?
I would just say be careful of Instagram memeing actual wisdom.
Ooh, yeah.
You can't manifest your way out of a concentration camp if you're a Jew in World War II.
No.
The reality is that your thoughts don't become real because you hold them for 60 seconds. External power dynamics are real.
Yes.
Systemic inequalities are real. They influence.
Yes.
And you are real. You can decide, to Viktor Frankl, that experience, and decide that there is meaning even in that existence, even in that moment, and find your authentic joy and truth in that moment. That power does lie within you. And the more you exercise it, the greater, as you move forward and progress in life, the greater your ability to impact those very external surroundings. Your influence starts to expand beyond yourself. It's an extraordinary thing. And sometimes you've lived in a tent or a village your whole life, and it can only expand to your immediate family, or it can only expand to your clan, or it can only expand to your village. Other times it can expand globally. Sometimes you just need it to expand to your kids, to your spouse, to your business partner.
Right.
Either way, it doesn't matter, because what you can and should control is what is within you. That is up to you. And you must take responsibility for that. At some point, you cannot look around and blame the situation. It is now your responsibility, and you do what you can with the cards that you've been dealt, rather than either pretending you haven't been dealt cards or crying over the cards.
Yeah. Wow. Shermin, I got to cancel my day drinking now and go out and conquer the world.
I haven't day drank in 20 years.
Yeah. I don't even remember the last time, but thank you.
I wish I could day drink. I mean, that would be phenomenal. That would be amazing.
Right? We just have to sign off from all responsibilities for a 100%. Good week.
I would have to never do anything again. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been such an amazing conversation. The wisdom in such a small window. Wow. Thank you. We will drop all of your links that you share with us below. Definitely want everyone to get their hands on Stoic Empathy. I also want to know if they're like, I need more of this woman in my life. Where do they follow you? Where do they find you? What's the best place to connect?
Besides buying the book, I am on social media. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and I'm sorry to say, but I'm old, so I'm also on Facebook.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay. A lot in common, you and I.
Yeah, we do actually.
So you can certainly follow me on social media. I am trying to create a YouTube channel and get a newsletter together as well. Hopefully those will be fully launched by next month. They're in their beta phases right now. And Stoic Empathy you can buy from anywhere. Barnes & Noble, Target, your local bookstore. If you want to click a button and Jeff Bezos brings it to your house, man, God bless you. You do what you need to do. Click the button.
Thank you so much. Again, just phenomenal. Fed my soul today. This is going to stay with me. So thank you.
Thank you. The pleasure was mine.
Well, listeners, you know the drill. Until next time, go manage like a leader.
Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Terrible Leader. If you're feeling brave and have your own terrible leader story that you'd like to share, head over to transcendleadershipcollective.com/podcast to fill out a guest application. We'd love to hear from you. Confessions of a Terrible Leader is hosted by Layci Nelson and produced and edited by Fixation Point Productions. Music is by Leif Olson and Mary Scott from the band The Number of Months. Confessions of a Terrible Leader is a free leadership resource offered by Transcend Leadership Collective. If you are ready to refuse the limits of average leadership and join the leadership revolution, visit transcendleadershipcollective.com to check out our offerings for engaging workshops, strategic planning, and more. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. And until next time, go manage like a leader.